as I talk. I'm retired military. I've been a locksmith for over 53 years, and I've been involved in the Boy Scouting program for over 63 years. And while I worked at Loring, this little short story, a lot of people here in Aroostook County don't realize what this base went through and what I went through one particular night. My truck was broke down a couple days, and it was in the garage being fixed. So a voice kept telling me, and I feel that it's comes from Jesus telling me to be prepared. So kept telling me these high security locks and safes that were in the command center, you need to start practicing. You need to start looking at these locks and preparing yourself to an emergency. So for about 2, maybe 3 days, I went through those locks like you wouldn't believe. I ran into problems. I figured out how to overcome them, and things worked out well. So this one night I went home, maybe a month later, all of a sudden I get a call. It's about 2 in the morning, and it was a command center. So they told me that we have a national emergency. You need to come here, and you're getting a police escort. And forgive me for being emotional, but anyway, so I got my escort, where we had to show our badge and give our call signs and all that. Nothing of that sort that night. I was grabbed by my jacket, get in here. And the combination on the high security safe fell off on the dial. They could not get into it. So the klaxons went off, and our bombers were heading to Russia. And the Pentagon called and gave a call sign saying, "This is an exercise, call the bombers back." And the dial fell off, and everybody panicked. So I got in there, I put the dial on, and I started practicing how to break into this from previous couple weeks. And I finally got it open. So So they kicked me out of that area and told me to get behind the curtain, have a seat, and they'd get with me here in a few minutes. But being in the military, I was in communications, so I could understand. I could hear them talking on the radios, what was going on. And there was a lady sitting next door, next to me, and she was crying her eyes out. She tried to talk her husband to come back. And he was trained never to pay attention to anything unless he had the proper code. It might be the enemy trying to, make you do other than what was your mission? So I wanted to talk to her, but they had another female officer that was trying to console her, and she failed, and the bombers were still going there. So finally, when they got into the safe, I opened it up just a little bit, and they put me there, and the colonel went inside, got the right codes, and I could hear him passing it out. He says, this is Alpha Mike 2. I authenticate Bravo Bravo 4. And they came back, and the authentication properly read, and he says, this is Alpha 1, I'm turning back. So I realized years later that it was Jesus kind of training me to get this close encounter and to neutralize it. So, meanwhile, back to me. I was born in Edmundston, Canada. We lived in St. John, New Brunswick. And at that time, when my parents lived up there, there was no hospitals around. The nearest one was in Edmundston. So that's why I took and I was born there. So I come from a 5. How's that? Sorry. I come from a family of 5, and I was the oldest. So, as being the oldest in the family, we were French-speaking family, and we were Catholics. And so that went on that way until, I was about 5 years old, and my father got a job here in Caribou. So we moved to Caribou. Well, when I got to be 6 years old, here comes school. Well, at that time, usually the Catholic families, we had a Catholic school here in town, so the families would register their children when they were born. I says, now I'm 6 years old and I wasn't registered. There was no room at this school. And I think about it today, thank God. So I went to a public school, and but at home, in the neighborhood we were in, most of the kids there could speak French, so I got along real well. But when I went to the public school, I couldn't speak English at all. So they kept me back the first year in school, and my parents planted me in front of a TV, and I learned English. So I was broken English. But today, you'd never know that I was English or I was French. And before my grandparents passed away and my parents, I would go home and visit them, and my parents would talk to me in French, and I would answer them back in English. So, but I still understand it, and it's got me through some pinches here and there throughout life. Then come time, 6 years old, in the Catholic faith. I had to go to Sunday schools, you might call it, and my mother would take each one of us kids. She'd take us to the bathroom. She'd sit on the cover, and we'd kneel in front of her, and we had to learn all our prayers. And we had to know all by heart. So that prepared me for my catechism. Being the oldest in our family, my mother leaned on me quite hard. She taught me how to sew. She taught me how to make my bed, how to do dishes, how to iron, vacuuming, how to do the floors, how to do gardening. We had a big garden, so they needed a lot of help, and how to save money. So, I kept these things up, and as my other siblings got a little older, then my load got a little easier. So that's the way it had to go at home. Everybody had to pitch in. While I was growing up, though, I was pallbearer for my grandparents' funerals and for one of my cousins. And I was really, really uneasy about the dead. I was quite nervous about it. And my cousin especially, he was my age, and he passed away, and I wondered how God could take such a young person like that. He died of kidney failure at the time. There was no dialysis machines around. He had to wait for a donor. And his father had taken him downstate. Hopefully they may had had a kidney available for him, and they didn't make it. So I was pallbearer for his funeral. And in about that same time frame, I'd say about within 6 months, 8 months, whatever, my aunt that lived in Fort Kent, she had a baby girl. And the baby didn't make a week. So this is where I started questioning a lot about life and about the Catholic faith. That was my first stepping stone. We went to the funeral. Then when we went to the gravesite, we pulled into the gravesite area, and nice graveyard, well-groomed, well-trimmed. But we didn't go there. We went this way. And over here was a field, high grass. And I saw a hole dug there. Her brothers had gone over and dug a grave for her. And I looked at that, and I looked at my parents. I said, what the heck's going on? Why can't they put her over there? They said, because the baby wasn't baptized. And I thought, what? Baby's not even a week old. She didn't have time to sin. She hadn't even time to grow up. So we went round and round and round on that issue. And I didn't like it. But every now and then when I would go up there and we'd go by the grave site area, you can see where the family went and mowed that spot and took care of it. So I don't know today if it's still being taken care of or not. But It's really too bad. Then came, for me, First Communion and Confession, the next hurdle. So I had to learn all my prayers and a couple others, I guess. And my mother quizzed me about my Sunday school. And then come time for confession. And they said I had to go in that box over there to that priest and confess my sins. I thought, what? How come? And we kept round and round and round on that situation. I says, but he's not God. But that he's been delegated from God that he can do this. And I didn't buy it. And I had a real tough time with that. So I didn't know at that time God was working with me then too. And didn't even know it. So as time went on, I get into my teenager years, and Carla can relate to this. They had a roller rink in Caribou, and I used to go up to the roller rink a lot. I was a member of the speed club there, you may call it. I was one of the fastest skaters, and I was non-beatable for 3 years. I had my own roller hockey team, was the Rams. We were undefeated for 3 years. And I took dance skating. I got pretty good at that too. So, but one night, usually at the roller rink they had couples only, remember? So, couples only, guy gets to go ask a girl to go out and skate with him. It was just for couples. So, I had no problems going out there and asking somebody, and we went out and skating, and no big deal. But this one night, there's a group of there was a group of 3 girls. And I had a tough time going up to ask her to skate. But when I did, it was like fireworks. But I never let her go. Got her phone number. We talked hours on the phone. And she was a junior in high school at Presque Isle. And I was a junior in high school in Caribou. So as time went on, we got married in 1970. And she had a job at Loring Air Force Base. And I had a job over in Presque Isle at the Converse Rubber. I was a stitching mechanic on the second shift, fixing sewing machines. So we were always going by each other all the time. And so finally, I come home one night and the lights are on. And I thought, gee, it's not the weekend. What's going on? So she said that you got an interview tomorrow at the base and they want to talk to you. So I went the next day, got interviewed, got the job. But the job was working at the commissary, second shift. So I wasn't any better off, but I was getting more money. So my parents used to work there while I was a teenager at Loring for vendors, and they would stock certain products in their store. So a lot of these packages were quite heavy, so my mother would ask me to go along to help her. So I got to know those people up there, and it made my interview a lot easier. So then I got promoted and I went to the carpenter shop, and then I wanted to go to the locksmith school. That was a trick by itself. They didn't want to send me because I wasn't in that slot. So meanwhile, I wanted to build a house, and well, before that, I skipped a whole area here. Well, no, I didn't. I'm on track. We wanted a new home, and there was one in Washburn, made by Dead River, and so we both went to the FHA, applied, and he ran the numbers, and he said, "You don't qualify." Wow, that's a first for me. So he says, so he ran the numbers again, he says, so he looked at my wife, he says, "If you would quit your job, you qualify." So I kind of looked at him and I said, "Wow." And then her face lit up like a light bulb. She wanted to start a family, and this was the only way we could get a house, and she had to quit her job. So she quit her job, and so we started our family, and we lived in Washburn. So that worked out rather well because I got another raise on top of that, and that worked out real well for me. And so things went well for a couple years or so. And we had 2 boys. And my kids were small at that time. And one Friday night, I had joined the guards up here also, and I was getting ready to go that next day for guards, and she indicated to me she didn't feel good. So Saturday morning I got up and she says, "Can you call your sister to help me with the kids?" So I did. I come home that Saturday night, and she wasn't doing well at all. So I called her mother, and her mother came over the next day to help her. And I had to go to guards, and I tried to get out of it, and they wouldn't let me go. So that Sunday, she passed out, and there was a doctor ready that lived down the road from us. And she gave her a call, and he came up, examined her, and they took her by ambulance to Presque Isle Hospital. So early Monday morning, about 2, I was on the couch somewhat sleeping. It was like these things going through my head. You got these things, what are you going to do with the kids? Who's going to take care of them? How are you going to juggle your finances? And my mother and Mrs. Grant, her mother, went up, and then I heard the noise. So she passed away. My mother cursed God, and I tried to ease her, and that didn't go well. And so anyway, I thought to myself, gee whiz, I got myself a new home, had the love of my life, I had 2 great kids, great job, and now things all fell apart on me. She died May 22nd, 1973. And when I went to the funeral home, I knelt beside her casket. I held her hand, ice cold. But one thing did happen to me was my fear of death that I had before was gone. It took about 3 years for me to somewhat get over this. I went aimlessly, you might say. I went to the church for counseling. That didn't work. I went to AMHC for professional counseling. That didn't work. I was involved with the Boy Scouts then, and that occupied my time and eased my time. And I did pray to Jesus every now and then. And I didn't know if he was talking to me or not. At that time, I wasn't as educated about Jesus as I am now. But now I can evaluate a lot of things that happened to me then, and knowing what's going on, what I know now. But at that time, when I used to go on, the Scouts wanted to go on a camping trip or something like that. First thing, some people would say, well, what are you going to do with your kids? I packed them up and I brought them with me. And the kids, they loved it. Each Scout in their scouting history always has a niche of some type, and everybody is different. My youngest one liked to play fire in the fireplace when I brought him up there, but as a Scout, he was the best fire starter we had. He won many contests. My oldest, he liked Dutch oven cooking, and there was a particular art to that, and he was very good at it. Then my family kind of got involved, and I just, they figured, well, it's about time you get married again. Well, I don't know, I didn't have that in mind. And so they tried to fix me up with blind dates. So that didn't go over real well, and I didn't like it. And then one day, my mother calls me up, and she says to me, excuse me here. My mother says, why don't you come over for lunch? She says, I cooked your favorite. I said, oh, okay. So I drove in and sat down, and all of a sudden I go to the table, and there's this young lady sitting there. So my mother introduced us, and she says, this is my friend. Oh, okay, so this ain't no date. So we talked and had lunch and all that. I looked at my clock. Oh, geez, I'm late. I said, I got to get moving, Mom. Nice meeting you. See you later. And off I went. And the both of them, but I didn't know what that was for. So later on that evening, I had, excuse me, I showed up at home, and my mother asked me, she said, well, what do you think of this gal? Well, I don't know. What about her? So she said, well, you think you want to call her, take her out? I said, no.
So, well, why not? She'd make a good wife for you and all that. And I said, look, these gals that you guys are trying to match me up with, you don't have to marry them, I do. So I says, I'll pick who I want. So then it left it from there on my choice, on my grounds. So finally my brother had a barbecue over to his place and invited me over, and he says, no dates, just come over. It's just friends. I says, okay. So I went over, and yeah, he was right. And I socialized, but there was another young lady there that I'd never seen. She was from Limestone, and I kind of grew fond of her. So I asked my sister-in-law to get us hooked together, I guess. And she says, well, so we did meet several other times, and within that year, we got married. So I took her home to meet my family, and I took her over to my home to meet my kids. And she liked the kids, and they were doing rather well with her. So finally I thought, well, maybe I should get married. So we did. So everything went well for about 3 years. At the end of 3 years, one day I come home and she said, marriage isn't what she thought it was, and she didn't want to be married anymore. So that hit me like a brick wall. And so the kids stayed with me, and we stayed at our home, and she left. And she got an apartment of her own. And several months later, she had a boyfriend, and they were living together. So I didn't believe in divorce. I figured once I had a wife that I would stay with her, and that this is the way God wanted it anyway. So I toyed with that for, gee whiz, I know, a month or more. So one day I was in my bedroom. I sat on the edge of the bed. On this side, on the nightstand, was 2 Catholic Bibles. On top of it was the King James Version, and it was my first wife's Bible. I took it, and I just opened it. And I read that the only way that you can get a divorce or whatever, if one of the spouses was unfaithful. And I looked at that, and I read that like 3 or 4 times. So then that day I went down to see a lawyer, and I got me a divorce. And so that was it for that. And today I tried to find that passage in that Bible. I went through that Bible I don't know how many times, and I could not find it. But it was there the day I needed it. Well, about 3 years passed again, almost, and my brother and sisters were a lot older, and they used to go roller skating, and they go bowling, and they did all kinds of things. So my youngest brother, he said, why don't you come out with us? Got to do something. It's okay. So I went. And I kept going with them, and I knew just about everybody there except one girl, and that was Carla's sister. And at that time, I didn't know her or anything, and so we got a little closer and finally we were dating, and so just about 3 years went by, and we did get married. But one thing about the Catholic religion, since I got a divorce, I couldn't get married in the Catholic Church because I needed an annulment. And Brenda didn't want to get married unless I got it. So I had to fill out this form and send in money. And I got an annulment. So now everything's all right. So we got married. She was very, very good with my kids, and she was really dependable. And I'm really grateful for her. And I found out that you can't compare two individuals like that, because each one of them has their own strong points and their own individual. So so anyway, we're still married, been over 40 years. So, but Seventh-day Adventist Church kind of put a knife through that, but that's okay. I mean, I'm happy with my decision. So anyway, while I was married to Brenda, I came home one day and I grabbed my lunch and sat down in front of the TV, flipped the channels, and all of a sudden the medical channel was right there. And this guy was on there talking about forensics. And he says, if you have a relative or a loved one that you don't know what they died of, get the medical records and you can send it down to Kentucky, and they put down the information, and we can do a reasonable search and examination of the records and find out what they died of. Well, we didn't know what my wife died of. It was marked on the death certificate as whitish anemia, something to do with the blood, and it was non-contagious. So I went and seen a lawyer, and a lawyer had the records taken from Presque Isle Hospital and sent to Kentucky. And they said that I would get a package in the mail, 3 to 6 months. It's okay. So meanwhile, in all this, I found out that Dr. Donahue in Presque Isle, at that same time, his daughter was 16 years old and passed away 2 weeks before my wife did. So I'm sitting there, well, I wonder what the heck that was all about. So one day I got a package in the mail that said Kentucky on it. I finally got an answer. And she died from her tampons at that time had perfume in it, and the perfume poisoned her. So I figured probably Dr. Donahue's daughter happened the same way. So my lawyer told me, he says, you know, the statute of limitations here in the state of Maine is 10 years. He says, you're in your 11th year, so there's nothing you can do about this. I said, well, I wasn't going to do anything about it. I said, I just needed to know. So he says, okay. So on the legal end of it, they ended that. But I did take the information to her parents. And I told them. And I showed them the documents. And at least they had some closure also. So, so then one afternoon, we're all sitting around the kitchen table, and the house that I bought with my second wife, I hated it. I wish I was still in Washburn. So I told Peggy, my wife I am with now, I said that I wanted to build a home. I don't like this place. I want to sell it. I want to get out of here. So we looked at property, and we found the one where we're at now, and we built our home. And that's where we've been since. While I was building the house on a Sunday, I get a call from the Baptist church here in town, and it was a young female. She said, she asked my name, and I said, yeah, that's me. And she says, you're not supposed to be working on the Lord's Day. And what's that? Yeah, she said, you're not supposed to be working on the Lord's Day, when I was building my house. And she hung up on me. So my wife asked me, she says, I told her what it was, and she says, does that bother you? I said, yeah, it does. I said, I know I'm not supposed to be working on the Lord's Day, but I says, we've got to get this house squared away so our family can live. So we kept on doing that. And as time went on, I drifted away from the Catholic Church. Catholic Church, I think about it now, nobody brought a Bible to church. And during the services, they were just like robots. And I could tell you on their sermons, it was just like a rut in the road. Every year, just about the same time, I could say, oh, they're going to be preaching about this. Oh, they're going to be preaching about that. And sure enough, it was. They never deviated from that. Not right, Dean? They never deviated from that schedule, you might say. And I was not overly impressed, and I just didn't have the feeling for God there. I knew it was somewhere, but I didn't know where. So I drifted away from there, and so my wife got herself a daycare center, and I got my locksmith business where we are now. And things were running good, and I did all right. And all of a sudden, the Jehovah's Witnesses and the Mormons started pounding at my door. And they come in, and I listened to what they had to say. I read their brochures. I wondered, well, maybe this is for me. I don't know. But it didn't jump out at me and grab me. So they did come by 2 or 3 more times. But I never threw them out because I figured God would judge me on that. And I wanted to be fair and listen. Then one day, the Seventh-day Adventists come knocking on my door. It was Dean and Maria and Isaiah. We had quite the discussions. They left me some literature, and I told them, yes, I would read it. And we left with a prayer. And I thanked them for coming. So they did come by 2 or 3 times after that. And I said the same thing. So one time before that, I told Dean, I says, well, you'll be surprised one day, I'll show up there. So, I kept thinking about it all the time. And I really didn't have any answers. And then I heard Carla had gone to a new church. So Carla come over, and so everybody kind of skipped aside. They didn't ask her anything, and they treated her like a shuffled you to one side, didn't they? So I sat there, and so I asked her questions. So when she said they were Seventh-day Adventists, then I kind of linked her and Dean together. So I says, okay. So I let it be. So I went online, and I went into YouTube, and I Googled Seventh-day Adventist Church, and they had a huge playlist. I thought, wow, okay. So I started going through each one of them. Mark Finland, Doug Batchelor, Helen White, and I went and listened to all their sermons. And Carla comes over. So I told her what I did. So she said, well, I got some tapes at my house I want you to listen to. So she goes and gets them, brings them over. So in the mornings, I used to slip these discs in, and I'd sit there and I'd watch these. And I learned a lot from them. Then Dave Barrett and Dean came back one Sunday. This is where all the fun started. So I was down on my lawnmower mowing grass, and they came over, and so I killed the mower, and we sat there and we talked for over an hour. And the wife wanted me to hurry up and get home, get the grass done, hurry up and get home, because we had things to do. So she kept looking down from the house, which I didn't know at the time. And so finally, they left. And I got my mowing done. And I went up to the house, and she says, who the heck are those guys? I says, well, they're from the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and they wanted to talk to me. And she says, well, they never come up here and talk to me. I says, well, if you want, I'll call them up. They can come over. So, no, so she skirted the issue. So, which reminds me, on that same note, Wayne, I got to share with you before I forget it. For this testimony, I had certain pictures I wanted in mind that I want to show up on screen. But between 4 families of photos being over to my place, we got them stuffed all over the place. That means I have to go digging. And if I go digging, then that wouldn't go well with her. So I abandoned that project and figured I'll just talk. Then Wayne calls last night. We're sitting there on the couch, and we go over, and he said he'd help me with the photos today and all that. That means I would have had to go out last night and get them, and she'd be right there with me. So she said, what do you want these for? And I said, well, it's for my testimony. Well, what's that for? And I said, well, that's my journey to Christ. I says, and I said, this is what I went through. And she just kind of rolled her eyes, and that was it. So be it. So anyway, that's what happened. We almost got into a turmoil over it, but yeah, we. So anyway, Carla kept feeding me some of these videos, and I did well with them, and I appreciate it. And then I get a shocker, and I didn't know what it was about yet, but would soon find out later. Went to bed that night, about 2 in the morning. I heard my name. So got me right up out of bed, and so I looked at my wife. I says, "What do you want?" She says, "Nothing. I didn't say anything." I said, "Go back to sleep." Okay. So I just barely got back to sleep, and I heard my name. This time I paid attention. It was like a man's voice. So I looked around, looked at the wife. I said, "Did you say anything?" She says, "No, I didn't." So finally, I got up out of bed. I went downstairs, and I went where the double doors are to the deck, and I looked around to see if there was anybody out there. Nobody. I went into the garage, looked through the garage window into the yard. Nobody out there. I went back to bed and fell asleep. Well, later on, when I started reading the Bible, and I get into the book of Samuel, and I heard what Samuel went through, but the Lord called him 3 times, and I only got called twice. And the minute I read that, I'm sitting here, a big, oh, that happened to me too. And so the only thing I could figure was our Lord was trying to put me on the right track and to coax me to come to church. So Carla comes over. I didn't tell her what happened, but I said, "Carla, what kind of Bible do you guys use at your church?" She says, "King James Version." I said, "Great. Can you get me one?" She said, "Sure." I said, "I'll pay you." She said, "I'll take care of it." So then she comes racing into the house, and she comes and brings my Bible to me. And I thanked her, and we talked for a few minutes. And my wife got a little bit upset because she never said hello to her or anything. But, oh well. So so then I asked her, I says, "When do you guys have your services?" She said, "Of course, on Saturdays." I said, "Oh, I figured that much." So I said, "But the time?" So she said, "Well, we start Bible studies at 10 o'clock and church is at 11:30. I said, "Okay." So here comes that first Saturday. I got myself ready. I got my Bible. And I go upstairs and got myself a shirt. My wife comes out. She's out of the bathroom. She says, "Where are you going?" I said, "So I'm going to church." So, "Oh, good. That's great." Then all of a sudden, her facial expression changed. She says, "Which church?" I said, "I'm going to Carla's church." She said, "I don't want you to go there." I said, "Why?" "No, I don't want you to go there." I says, "It's okay." She says, "No, they're a cult." I said, "They ain't no cult." And so she says, she pleaded with me not to come here. And I said, "Well," she says, "Look, I'll still love you." And I says, "I'll still come home. Everything will be the same, except I'm going to a different church. I'm going to be meeting people that I haven't met before. and they're not going to be like the Catholic Church. So I left. I came here, and I'm still here. So then came time for baptism, and I was baptized here about 3 years ago. Then the deacon ceremony. And it was a little disappointing because not so much on the church's end of it, because these are things I wanted to do. And I invited some of my family, including my wife. They never came. The only family was Carla. And I invited the people that brought me here, Dean and Isaiah and Maria and Carla. So, and I deeply thank all of you for the time that you spent getting me here. Took me 3 years to come about, but I got here. So if you listen to me, I guess everything ran in 3 years. So, but it's been over 4 years now since I've been here, and I truly enjoy it, and I appreciate all your fellowship. Thank you. Yeah, and I want to thank the people that did pray for me. Carla said to me, she says, you know, you got a lot of people praying for you. And it shocked me. I says, really? What for? She said, well, they want you to come to the church. And it just overwhelmed me because I never heard that before. And I learned several things in the Bible that were shockers when I read it during Bible study here. And I guess you two can remember, I mean, I was just, what the heck? You know, I never heard this before. And so they brought the right references to me, and I kind of read it, and okay. But it was the first time I ever heard it. And the Catholic religion would never bring that out. So but that's my journey, and that's about it. And I thank you for listening. I guess our closing hymn is on 608. I guess I took this a little easier than I thought, so. And talking about my first wife, that was quite the journey, and I still miss her today.
Well,
bow our heads for a prayer. Dear Lord, thank you for this Sabbath day, and let me share my story and my sorrows and my joys. I thank you for this day and all the fellowship of this Seventh-day Adventist Church. And because of you, this is why we're all here. Thank you, Jesus. In your name, amen.